You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hard Foul. I am Jim Quigley again here with my brother, Michael. You know, we are a couple of weeks away from the Celtics championship and the parade and all the celebration, and the offseason is off in full force. And, you know, a lot of what has happened with the Celtics has been what people said was going to happen. We've had extensions for White and Tatum. We've had Luke Cornett resigned. But the big news came yesterday or the day before. My timeline's a little screwed up.
It came yesterday, Jim.
Right after the White extension, that Wyc is putting up the Celtics for sale, and what that means long term. Very interesting that he's signing these huge checks and it's going to hand them off to another billionaire to pay.
Well, to get paid, not have to take the responsibility.
Oh yeah, or if it's John Henry, maybe he'll just ship out everybody on the team and add it to his portfolio. But today we're very, very fortunate, Mike, to be joined by Michael Pina of The Ringer, formerly of the Winning Plays podcast. That's how I got to know you, Mike. I was an avid listener of that, and I was disappointed when that came to a close. But thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, taking the time today.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for reaching out. Can't wait to talk about everything that the Celtics have done coming off their 18th championship, which is obviously fantastic for Celtics fans.
No, it's great. It's great. But what is your reaction? I don't know what the reaction is around the league to, Wyc putting this up for sale. Obviously, this must have been in the works for a little bit here. This Wyc didn't just wake up yesterday and say, all right, it's time to put the Celtics up for sale. It leaves me a little nervous on what could come next, whether it's, the Saudis finally getting a foothold in here, or, some really despicable billionaire coming in and, making it kind of a little uneasy to watch the Celtics. So I don't know what your thoughts are or what you're hearing, and, we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it caught me by surprise for sure, just because Wyc and his investment group have owned the Celtics for
22 years?
Yeah, I think since 2006, 2000, I'm not exactly sure on the year on the top of my head, but it's been a very long time. They won 2 championships, obviously. They've been fantastic owners and governors throughout their tenure, especially just relative to some of the other people who own NBA teams in terms of their willingness to spend and their inability to help themselves when it comes to meddling in personnel decisions, or just being super impatient, which I think is a big issue right now in the NBA with some organizations. And so anytime you have, I mean, one of the great things that have made the Celtics so consistent is their low turnover rate. And that goes for ownership, that goes for their front office. I mean, when Danny Ainge stepped aside, it was a stunner, and then you just kind of slide Brad Stevens, who had been with the organization for 8 years, into his role. Pretty much everyone, it's a very small front office. Pretty much everyone in the front office stayed, including Danny Ainge's son, Austin. And that type of continuity, those relationships, that really matters, I think. Joe Mazzulla, they bring in Ime Udoka, obviously, but Joe Mazzulla stayed on with Ime Udoka's staff, and then obviously rose up, going from Brad to Ime, and then became the head coach. So it's just more of a stable environment that not every organization can replicate. And so when you talk about bringing in a new owner, I don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be on that. There's some mixed reporting, and the statement that was put out was a little confusing to me.
It was a little ambiguous, I thought. I thought it left it open to it could happen almost at some point this year, or it could, stretch out depending on what the best. I think it's all about what deal he gets, right? In terms
Yeah,
of
that's another thing. I mean, you got to kind of wonder. You guys threw out some potential buyers. You got to wonder how many people. First of all, what the the franchise is worth, which is like, I would say between like 5 and $7 billion. Like, how many people are going to who are interested in even purchasing a professional, buying into the NBA, have that kind of money or can get that kind of money? And what if you're a Celtics fan? Instability is bad, but if you were trying to look at this from a glass half full perspective, anyone or any group that has enough money to buy the Celtics probably isn't going to be cash strapped in terms of slashing payroll in the imminent future, because this is going to be an extremely expensive team.
Yep.
And we all know the restrictions that the first apron and the second apron are having on teams, and they're really they've hampered and have potentially already broken up some contenders. Um, and so that's another variable that is, I think, we'll see. It's just a lot of unknown right now, and it's really tough to talk concretely about this issue. But Wyc Grousbeck has been a fantastic owner throughout his time in Boston. And you mentioned John Henry. I would, and I think all Celtics fans would just shudder at that possibility. So hopefully it's not him. But I think whoever does buy the Celtics will have a lot of resources, a lot of capital, and will hopefully have, there's a lot of pressure on Wyc also to, a lot of responsibility on Wyc to sell the team to someone or a group that is invested in the Celtics' success also, not just the highest bidder. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. But it's a weird bit of news. Not gonna lie, it's still kind of coming off the championship parade, which was like a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
It's a whirlwind for sure.
Yeah, and I look at the sale and I wonder too, like, do you buy the Celtics? Is it someone just with a real lot of money who looks at it not to make money, but looks at it as this is something I'm going to have fun with because of how expensive it is? You're buying a team that doesn't own their own stadium. They're going to be paying, what is it, like $400 million extra in taxes because of what they're paying their starting lineup right now. And who knows if Wyc is looking at this thinking too, like, I'm just going to extend Hauser because I'm not going to be paying for him anyways at this point. So do you look at it like, is it going to be similar to like the owner of the New York Mets, who I think kind of looks at that franchise when he bought it as like a toy? Or do you think it is somebody in here that they could make money? Can you make money off the Celtics the way they're constituted, or is it hard to make money with the way things are structured now? Because I really get confused by the whole thing.
Yeah, that's definitely not my area of expertise.
Okay, sorry.
I would say that when you are a winner and you're hosting a ton of playoff games, like every June and every spring, I should say, that's a lot of revenue. And if you look at, I know that the Golden State Warriors built their own arena off of the start of their dynasty, which is a different situation than Boston, obviously. But that was kind of a self-generating source of money when they were really good. And so I would say that the Celtics will make a ton of money if they are actually like, win 2 and 3 or go back to back or whatever it is. And they're incredibly popular internationally. And there's a lot of different ways to create revenue streams off of an extremely popular brand like that. But it is a ton of money. The luxury tax, the repeater tax is going to hit them pretty soon. And I would say Celtics fans, regardless of who owns the team, would potentially need to brace themselves after I know all these extensions came in, but
Yeah, for next
in
year.
3 years, like not this starting five is going to look a lot different, I would
Yeah,
assume.
I would too. I would too.
Yeah.
And you're right about it being an international brand because of our listeners that we have in Australia and Taiwan that listen to this podcast. So the
I'm
Celtics
glad
are
he used the
definitely an
plural
international
there.
brand.
Might
We
just be
appreciate those
listeners.
listeners. If we could switch gears, Jim, I just wanted to ask a question about, the Knicks offseason and how that might impact the Celtics, unless you wanted to go in another direction right
Well,
now,
yeah,
Jim.
no, I just wanted to stay on the Celtics quickly. Mike, your articles, particularly, I really enjoyed the Tatum and Brad Stevens article, and I thought, they just fit together too, about how the Celtics kind of built this and how Tatum handles his business and what he brings to the Celtics. And there was a quote that used from a league source about Tatum about how he doesn't bring any of that extra baggage that you see with other superstars. That he just kind of goes about his business, takes it seriously. Isn't going to show up his teammates or anything like that, is not going to show up the organization, has bought into the patience that you talked about that the Celtics have had, the stability that you talked about that the Celtics have had. And it kind of leads me into, the two extensions yesterday, they don't get a lot of headlines, but I thought they were pretty big deals. I think obviously extending Tatum's a huge deal and having him continue to be the cornerstone here. And then the Derek White one. You said the starting five could look a lot different. They got him on an absolute bargain. I assume. I think if he went to the open market next year, he could get 40 to 45 million potentially. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if they're looking for stability and they're looking to keep this going for a little while, I tend to see them holding on two guys that I see maybe from that starting five here in the future is the two guys they extended yesterday, and probably Jaylen Brown, and maybe everything else looks a little bit different. I don't know what your thoughts are on all that, but I just continue to bring good guys, humble guys, team guys, and that's kind of what they did yesterday with these extensions.
Yeah, I think that, when I talk about breaking it up, it's too early to say about any specifics there, honestly. I do agree with you that Derek White's extension is a fantastic contract. He's one of the best two-way players in the league. He is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and he's one of the best defenders at his position, and seemingly is still getting better at 30 years old, which is really impressive. And the Tatum extension is an absolute no-brainer. It's the most expensive contract in the history of NBA. That's kind of a technicality because Luka's extension is going to be the most expensive next
Every
year.
year, yeah,
Shea
right.
is going to be the most expensive Supermax extension the year after that. But he's worth it. I wrote that piece about him. Essentially, I started reporting it before, I guess like early on in the playoffs, but it was something that has been in my mind for a really long time just because of his overall value and if you just look at most franchise players in the NBA, they're very and can be very volatile and fickle and difficult to deal with. And sometimes your general manager, your president of basketball operations, is going to bed at night, like really nervous that they'll wake up and there's a phone call on their phone the next morning that's a trade demand that could just blow up everything that they've worked so hard to build.
Yeah.
And that has not really been a threat or a concern with Jason Tatum at all. So off the court, I think that a lot of that is undervalued, and his personality and his introverted nature is atypical of someone as good at basketball as he is. It's not to say he's the only one who's like that. I think, Jokic, SGA, you can name some other guys who are like that. But with Tatum, when you look at the on-court value, there's really no like glaring weakness that prohibits him from being a major positive impact in just about any type of lineup that you want to put him in.
Right.
So I think that is a lot of value, and you can put any type of player around him. And I thought that his defense, particularly in the finals, where he's able to guard a center, a 7-foot center, and switch every ball screen, was humongous. I mean, it's the reason why the Dallas Mavericks couldn't generate lobs. It's the reason why they couldn't generate corner threes. And, there were certainly possessions where Luka Doncic got the best of him one-on-one, because Luka Doncic is one of the best one-on-one players in the history of basketball, and he's going to do that. But the whole game plan is make those shots tough, have them be inside the arc, and have them be contested. And he did a fantastic job of that. And the Dallas Mavericks were, I mean, very inefficient with Luka on the floor. To say nothing of everything he did offensively, which is, I mean, I think he should have been hands down the Finals MVP, but that's like, who cares? Whatever. They won, but so I just think he's an immensely valuable piece. He's still improving, also, which is another bit of this. He's not a finished product.
Right.
I think that if you're looking at some of the weak points in his game, you have to point out that he is not an elite shot maker. He's not an elite tough shot maker against set defenses, which, Shea is, Luka is, prime KD, even KD now is. And you can go on down the line. There's other stars like that. But I think that the Celtics have accepted that and have added pieces that have made that less of an issue, if that makes any sense.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I would even say he's probably not even the type of shot maker Paul Pierce was when he was here and his prime down the stretch in big games, big moments. But I think, Michael, maybe correct me if you think differently, what he was able to do in the finals and take what the defense gave him, whether it was reading screens or getting downhill and finding the open man, I don't think he was capable of doing that 2 years ago against the Warriors. I think the Warriors kind of overwhelmed him and confused him at times and forced him into a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad shots. Where in your piece, he said it himself, where the Mavericks want to test your patience and they want to make you kind of force the issue. And I think that's getting older and just being more mature. But to your point, he's continuing to get better. I'm not even sure he does that last season. Never mind 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's true. I think that also the pieces around him in this year can't be discounted.
Yeah,
That's right.
He always had like there was no, I love all these players, but Marcus Smart does not space the floor like Derek White or Drew Holiday. Robert Williams does not space the floor, period. He always had short of stretches where Xavier Tillman had to play when KP was unable to. He always had 5 out, immense gravity, and he was able to take care of the switch heavy defensive scheme that the Dallas Mavericks had and beat his man off the dribble and draw 2 and take advantage of the 2-on-1 advantage consistently. So I do think he is better, to your point, absolutely. And I think he gets better every year, and he has his entire career. I also think that credit needs to be given to the coaching staff to really instill in him the need to get off the ball when he does and not force shots and trust his teammates. And then credit needs to be given to the front office for surrounding him with just absolute an elite supporting cast.
Yeah, you mentioned his rebounding in the article too, which I thought was a really good point. I mean, we all saw the rebounding, but I didn't realize he was the second most efficient rebounder in the playoffs. Maybe it was Anthony Davis, you said, was number one, that Tatum was grabbing 70% of his chances. I mean, those are things that for a team that didn't have KP, especially, and Al at 39 years old, there are a lot of times where I was talking to Jimmy about it, like they really need Tatum to be an elite rebounder to compete. And in this playoff run now. And I mean, he just stepped up in a lot of different ways. And I loved how you touched on it throughout the article, because you talked about his lack of elite shooting. But my question for you around that is, now that he's got a title out of the way, is that something that you feel more confident in, that he's going to get better at? Like, that's going to be the next thing that he improves in? Or do you feel like this is who he is and it's fine? You know, you see other players after they get that first ring out of the way, it seems less stressful and easier for them to play.
I definitely think he can be a consistent above average mid-range shooter. I just I think like getting to be a Kawhi Leonard on long twos or short 2-point jumpers, that's a really that's a hard bar. Like, that is really tough to. He's like, so I don't know if he'll ever be that good or as good as KD. Like, these are just like some of the all-time greats where I just need to get to my spot. It doesn't matter who's guarding me. Like, you better send two because I'm gonna hit this shot. Like, doesn't like just completely ignoring the first layer of defense. I don't know if Tatum will ever be that good, but I think that he can certainly be a more accurate and effective 3-point shooter. I think his shot selection is actually fine. There's some that you would like to see him put in the bag, particularly late in quarters, but his ability to create space is second to none. And if he unlocks that, becoming a 38% pull up 3-point shooter, then we're talking about someone who, I mean, this guy's already averaged 30 a game in a season. So like, there's really not that much more room for him to get to improve where it's like just feasible. But I think that in terms of efficiency, that would really help him. It would help ease the burden on everybody else in certain situations, in certain spots. But right now in his career, I think that just continuing to improve as a primary ball handler who reads defensive coverages, who understands spacing, who just makes quick, correct decisions. That's something that can always get better and always get tighter. And that's kind of the area where you can see him get better as he ages. And then, there's obviously like, oh, can he be a dominant post player? Can he be a little bit more efficient in isolation? Can he, he's not perfect, but he's really, really good at a lot of different things. And if he's not the best at anything, I think the way his game kind of is makes up for that, if that makes sense.
Does make sense. And I mean, we saw this year throughout the playoff run, he was a terrific pull-up 3-point shooter. I think his struggle was off the dribble. And I do think, I mean, he's such a good shooter that's only going to improve. And him and Brown have really improved every offseason, right? We haven't even touched on Jaylen Brown, but the two of them, since they've come into the league, they've gotten better and better. It seems like Tatum bigger and bigger. This guy's like a brick house. So I don't know if it's okay now. I wanted to ask about the Knicks, because I read your article on the Knicks, and here's my thing. Are they dumb again? I mean, did they overreact to this playoff run? I think they're a tough, hard-nosed team, but should they have been more patient to go after another guy? Was this the right move to really sell off all these pieces? And can they beat the Celtics? Because I think they're still going to be a fun team and a really lovable team, like they were last year. I think they're so easy to like, but I just don't think they're good enough to give up all these assets, to not bring in a guy who's going to take them over the top. And maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong a lot in the past, but I got the sense maybe you felt the same way, Mike.
No matter how many people tell me I have to like the Knicks, I'm not going to like the fucking Knicks, by the way. Just get that out there.
I love the way they played. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think they're really good. I think they should be labeled a contender. I think when you just talk about that specific trade, they gave up so much to get someone who is a very good two-way player and a nice complementary piece, but that's the type of package that you give up when you're really, really, really confident that this player makes you the favorite or this player sets you on a path towards um, just annual title contention. And, they may be right, for sure. I think that especially by doing this and being hard capped. You already saw the effect of that. They're hard capped at the first apron. I think
Yep.
they have like 6.5 million left to spend and 11 guys under contract. So they lose Isaiah Hartenstein, who
Yep.
was a really, really, I mean, I
He's
think he's
good.
one of the more underrated players
Yeah.
in basketball
Great
and
signing by OKC.
great signing. OKC is really scary, by the way. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, they
they're
loaded up.
scary.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's a fantastic rebounder. He's got that little floater. He
Yeah.
is one of the just by the catch-all metrics that I trust and a lot of people look at. Like he was measured out as the best or the second best defensive center,
oh, wow.
defensive player in the NBA last year. So
Really?
yeah, really good
Wow.
defender. And so I think you're missing a big part of your identity with his size going out the door, and you're really dependent now on Mitchell Robinson, who is hobbled
Oh.
every single year. So I think size matters for them in terms of how they play. Tibbs does not like to go small. He may need to go small for stretches with this team. They're built to do it, but like Jalen Brunson is a top 10 player in the NBA.
Of course.
He's a superstar. If you have one of those guys, particularly offensively, then you can be in just about any playoff series. And so when you recognize how good Jalen Brunson is, and you surround him with the amount of shooting that they have, it's a really interesting team. A lot of really fantastic individual and team defenders. I I got to see what happens with Julius Randle.
Right.
When I was writing that piece that you referenced, I forgot he was on the team like 250 words into the article. Like, so I'm
He's
really
going to be a
curious.
guy that wants the ball. I would think.
Yeah, 100%. And personally, I think that they don't go on the run that they made last year if he was healthy. So trading him is a potential move that is to come and could really shift how I feel about them and how they look and how they play. So we'll see. I think time will tell, but they're really good. They're, some have them second best in the East, some third. I don't know anyone has them fourth. So they're a really good basketball team.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I think with Randall and Anunoby they were 14-2, and they had like some crazy metric where they were outscoring teams by like 180 points during that run, which means like I'm not great at math, but definitely double digits every game. So maybe in their mind it's like, no, we're keeping Randall. This has worked out.
They also
it is
had
interesting to see
Havenstein in the middle
what they
there
end up
on that
doing.
run.
And are there any backup centers available on the market that could fill that role even, or is it just Precious Achiuwa coming back to New York?
I don't think Precious is in the cards. He could be. I believe they renounced his cap hold. So
It's like a Daniel Tice type guy they're looking at.
yeah, like some dudes have come off the board, honestly, that I thought could be really interesting and useful for them. I'm not sure if they have any. Yeah, they have some small trade exceptions that they could take advantage of potentially, but I don't think anyone is. The backup center market is not like they were really fortunate and intentional when they signed Isaiah Hartenstein. He was the best backup center in the NBA at the time.
Yes.
The Clippers losing him was pretty significant. So he's really skilled. He's a really good passer too, and he can play in the high post. And if you watch how Jalen Brunson operates off the ball, a lot of his success and a lot of how he got open was because Isaiah Hartenstein set him up. So he's really good, and I think that they will miss him I don't know if they'll miss him more than they'll appreciate Bridges, but um, they will miss him, and they're not going to be able to replace him with whoever they sign.
Well, they could have replaced him with the Cornet. You know, they could have got Luke Cornet, baby, but he decided to take a minimum and stay here. Um, Jim, did you want to touch on the Sixers, or did you have
Yeah,
any
sure.
other
I
questions
know,
about the
like,
Knicks?
I agree with most of what you wrote about the Sixers. I think Paul George is a fantastic two-way player. But I also think this was kind of a marriage of convenience. I think the new cap kind of expedited Paul George's you know, release. So however you want to frame it from the Clippers, and he's 30, 4 years old, and his games played is what they are, and the Sixers needed a big wing of his skill set. So even though there's risk involved, there's plenty of risk. I think this is, the best the Sixers could have hoped for. But to me, none of it matters. Like Paul George could be healthy for the whole entire season in the playoffs and be really, really good, unless Joel Embiid is in, the best shape of his career and is able to play um, at a high level in the playoffs, which, outside of maybe that one run with Butler where he was really, really good, Embiid has not been a playoff performer, really. And I'm not just saying this as a Celtics fan, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have much reason to believe to trust this Sixers team at all because I don't trust their big guy. And I know how talented he is, and I know he's a top five guy if he's healthy, but I don't rank him as a top five guy because I don't think he's available enough.
I think for me with Embiid too, it's more like he is available in those first three quarters of playoff games, and he puts up incredible numbers still. But it's always that fourth quarter where he doesn't look like he's in the shape he needs to be to finish it out.
He was a non-factor in the fourth quarter against the Knicks and just about every game.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the concern and pessimism about Embiid's health or Paul George's availability are totally valid. I think that giving Embiid, well, he's on a max and will, one would assume, be on another max when this is over in Philadelphia. But giving 4 years, 212 million or whatever it was to Paul George, that's a lot of money for someone who's 34 years old. And frankly, this roster is not finished it's not complete. And so I would like to see what Daryl Morey is able to do with, I think they have like 9 million more in cap
Right. They
space or
got 9
something
million.
like that. Yeah. So, you bring back Kelly Oubre, you lose Nick Batum, who's one of my favorite players in the whole NBA.
I thought he was great last year. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was. And so, I mean, won them a playing game.
That's
So
right.
he's a big loss in terms of needing two-way players who complement Maxey and Embiid. But you getting Paul George is like a definite upgrade, obviously, and he's a star. I'm a huge fan of his game. I kind of think that he's just really underappreciated, underrated, whatever it is, because of how this tenure with the Clippers has gone. But I just think he's so awesome. I think the world of his game, and I think that sometimes when he's miscast in a situation because Kawhi's hurt or he has to basically be a primary playmaker because they don't have a point guard, whatever it is, he isn't the best player that he could possibly be. I think that in this role, if he's healthy, if Embiid's healthy, if Maxey's healthy, if they get the proper 3-point shooting around them, Eric Gordon, I think, is a pretty good signing.
Yeah.
He's still a pretty good player. I think that it's just an ideal situation for him, and I think that this team also should be qualify as a contender.
Yeah.
I still think that the Celtics are. Um, I don't think the Celtics are like sweating too hard, I'll say, about Paul George coming or Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks. I think they're still the clear favorites, um, and getting better in a lot of ways. but like anything can happen in a playoff
Sure.
series. And
Especially
as
with
the
Embiid.
Celtics saw 2 years ago against the Miami Heat,
Yep.
Right.
Caleb Martin, by the way, still unsigned. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's crazy. Yeah, he could go over to Philly,
Philly
and
should sign him.
I mean,
I mean,
well,
there's the
that's
guy right there that will drop 30 against the Celtics when he needed to. I've loved their offseason. I feel like they had to do this. Like they had to bring in Paul George. It was a no-brainer to me. And then when I see them bring back Kelly Oubre, I know Jimmy's not a huge fan, but I thought he played really well for Philly last year, especially when guys were out. I know there was a time during the regular season where Maxey and Embiid both weren't playing. I thought Oubre's toughness showed out quite a bit,
he had a
especially
good game.
defensively, which I don't think we saw a lot of when he was in Golden State or Washington and the other places he played.
right.
And then bringing in Eric Gordon, they still have the opportunity to bring back Buddy Hield if they want to, I guess. So like, I just feel like I don't know if they can beat Boston, but with KP not being healthy, like this feels like the time to go all in right now because we don't know. Maybe KP's not the same guy next year. And you have a huge advantage if he's not, because the Celtics have a 39-year-old backup center. And as much as I love Luke Cornett, there isn't a ton there to throw at Embiid if he's healthy. So I understand why Philly's going all in right now. I would too.
Yeah, I
Seeing
know.
KP
I don't get
this
me
part of
wrong.
the season, I'd be all in.
I think this is what they had to do, Mike. I just kind of I fall more into your boss's kind of category with it as it comes to Embiid, where when are we going to get to a point where we stop talking about him as one of the best players in the league because he can't stay on the court. He continues to underperform in the playoffs. I think he still hasn't adapted his game where when it becomes playoff season, where he's still playing for the whistle instead of trying to play through the whistle. And I think it's really
Good point.
limited how far the Sixers have been able to go. And I get it. Like he came in with a catastrophic injury, and I'm not going to blame him for the bad feet. I mean, that's just bad luck and unfortunate. But I can't. I just can't trust this team until I see a season from him that he dominates through the playoffs. Even last year during the MVP season, playoffs started against the Celtics. I mean, he was a complete no-show in Game 7, a complete no-show. And I think that's just been his MO. And so that's my rant on Embiid. And I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy saying it because I can't stand the Sixers, but that is how I feel.
Yeah, I think that his health is a huge reason for a lot of the playoff disappointment. I mean, last year he's hurt.
Uh-huh.
He's playing, so he's playing, so he
Yeah.
deserves to be. You can criticize him all you want, but he's definitely not 100%. The year when the Celtics beat them in 7 2 years ago, he's hurt. I think he missed game 1 of that series,
Yeah, that
and
was a Harden game. Yeah.
yeah, I can't remember how many games in that series he didn't play or was like clearly
Body was hurt.
compromised. But I mean, yeah, to your point, like if that is what's happening every single year, then you're not going to win. So that's kind of the whole point of this is to win. I do think when he is healthy, he's obviously proven to be a totally unstoppable player, and he's one of the best rim protectors, one of the best drop bigs, one of the best post scorers, one of the best mid range shooters. He has stretches. I think he's a streaky 3-point shooter, but when that shot's going down, it's like, okay, what on earth are we supposed to do here?
Kick him in
So,
his knee.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I do think that is. I think he's unbelievable talent and a great scorer. I do think when you just look aesthetically and stylistically at how he does function, he does need to share the ball more than he does, in my opinion. And it's why I will always say and believe that Nikola Jokic is like head and shoulders above Joel Embiid as a basketball player, because one guy, like, numbers are fantastic, and I think that Joel Embiid's impact numbers is basic counting stats, whatever, advanced, they're all amazing, but he doesn't directly and sometimes doesn't indirectly make his teammates better versions of themselves in the same way that other great players do. And so that is something that he needs to figure out. And I think that he has a fantastic team around him now, or the players who are on the team right now are really ideal. Paul George is an absolute grand slam fit next to him. Maxi is just Maxi is really good. Um, and a great pick and roll partner. But I want to see him just tweak around the edges, just kind of how he plays the game and how he sees things. And I don't, this guy shoots over double teams. I think that that's something that he makes it like, a decent amount of the time. So it's hard to be like, don't do that. But I just think that in the general um, sense that shots like that aren't like, they're just not good basketball decisions. Like I just think that that needs to kind of be tweaked out of his game for him to be the best version of himself.
And what's tough for him I
Yeah.
was just going to say what's tough for him is having Jokic across the country that it's probably not even fair to compare to. I mean, I think Jokic is the best passing big man since Larry Bird. I think the way the ball leaves his hand so quickly. And so when you have that kind of you're being compared to that, and it's probably not fair because like it's an elite level that no one really should ever get to that Jokic is at in terms of passing the ball. It kind of shines the light a little bit brighter. Sorry, Mike. I know I cut you off, but
Yeah,
I
but
to drop that Larry Bird reference in there.
what I was
Every
thinking
call.
about, Mike, when you were talking about the passing, and he does hit those shots out of double teams. I think Philly, some of their Achilles heel sometimes is even when he's out there, they'll lose games because there isn't a lot of ball. And that's been part of the roster construction in the past. He did play with James Harden. So, but I think that is an area, if he were able to work on that, that would help Philadelphia in the long run, similar to what Jason Tatum does here in Boston. And to compare him to Jokic, yeah, sure. It's may not be fair, but Embiid's skilled, right? I don't know if he can make a one-handed alley-oop pass off a rebound from the other end of the court against the Washington Wizards, but he certainly could be better at that in the half court. I do have so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Mike, but the Celtics are so good at, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, like building up players, developing players, like a Luke Cornett, for example. When he came here, he was a three-point shooter, kind of hung out around the three-point line, couldn't rely on him to rebound and block shots, and now like totally redefined his game. You look at Grant Williams, how he developed over time when he was here. Even going back to Evan Turner, like back in those days and what he turned into and the money he made in the open market. Do you look at this roster right now? Is there a player? I know they traded for Jordan Springer. They traded for Springer and they drafted Jordan Walsh last year. Is there a guy that you as a Celt being tied into the team that you're really looking forward to as a developmental piece? And as they look out to fill out this roster, if they can't bring back Tillman, is there like a veteran free agent that you love that you wish the Celtics would just go and get?
14, and talk.
I'll answer the last thing first. I kind of am. I've been like joking with some of my friends and fellow writers and people who cover the team, like, when are the Celtics going to sign Daniel Tice? Like, that's just kind of like a running gag.
Right.
I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but they probably still love him. I don't know if they need another big, to be honest, and they want to use a roster spot like that. But yeah, I think Springer's a really interesting player. I think defensively he's particularly interesting, and that's part of what has intrigued Brad by him. It's funny because like in the NBA now, this is a big deal, like developing draft picks, like the draft and scouting, and it's like kind of never been more important than it is even for a top heavy team like the Celtics, where Jordan Walsh probably won't, I shouldn't even say probably won't be in the rotation. I don't know. Like, I don't know what gains he's going to make this summer, what types of improvement how he's able to evolve his game. It seems like, O'Shea Brissett is probably gone. That's not official yet, but leaning that way. And filling that role, it was a very small role, but getting some minutes at the NBA level on nights when, say, they need to, Jaylen Brown sprains his ankle in February and he's out 2 weeks or whatever. Can you step up and give us 10, 12 minutes? That would be huge in his second season. So that's kind of what I guess I'm looking for. I don't think that they're particularly invested in, getting help from the outside right now. I think internally they have everything that they need to win another championship. I think when you talk about development, like Sam Hauser is one of the, I think, one of the great stories and one of the great contracts. And he's someone, his next contract, he's extension eligible, obviously, right now. That's one to keep an eye out on if you're a Celtics fan. Because, I mean, in game 5 of the finals, I don't know how many minutes he played, but he was like, it was huge. And he's just is 3-point, one of the best 3-point shooters alive. So that's going to be.
And how many times was he out on an island by himself covering Luka in that series? And he held his own.
Yeah, moves his feet, doesn't play. I mean, a lot of guys who aren't the quickest will pick up a ton of touch fouls. Right. He does not foul, which buys into Joe Mazzulla's whole kind of defensive mindset. Like, this team does not foul, does not send teams to the free throw line, does not get teams in the bonus. And it's a huge part of why their defense is so good. And he is a part of that. I mean, Sam Hauser's like a straight up good defensive player, particularly in this system.
Hey, Michael, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. It was a lot of fun for us. I know you're a busy guy, and this isn't one of those big time shows to jump on, so we appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, guys. Anytime.
I feel like a real podcast now.
We didn't even say anything, offensive, so that's good.
That is good. Yeah, appreciate that.
We should do that.
All right, take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
OCs.